Special episode of Foresight TV. I've got my friend Dr. Bill Thomas. He is one of the, I love talking to him. He's one of the most provocative people in the industry. He pushes the industry to make it better. And so I am a huge fan. I know many of you are. So we are going to get started in just a moment. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Dr. Bill, welcome.
Glad to be with you, Steve.
So I would like to just start. Let's actually start by who you are and what your passion is. You're well known. I sort of assume everybody knows you. That's not necessarily a fair thing to do.
Well, I am a free-range geriatrician. So early in my career, even though I'm trained in medicine, it became clear to me that the structures and the cultures that we use to support older people really could stand some improvement. And so I've really spent my career trying to improve the context of care and support, services and supports, and to align those services and supports more with the person. I would say that that's been, really how I spent my time. Some people have heard of the Eden Alternative or the Greenhouse or Senior ER. So those are some of the models I've worked on over the years.
Terrific. And so I feel like you are as you have seasoned, you're being kinder than you used to be to the old models. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think that, not that long ago, I could be very fiercely critical of the status quo. And I think the insight that I gained really was that our field is full of extraordinarily fantastic people who, through no fault of their own, got tangled up in a really pretty dysfunctional system that's pretty ageist and pretty misaligned with the priorities of elders. Not their fault. That's what happens. And so I've really kind of shifted my emphasis more to talk about the need for structural change. And we got good people, bad system. Let's change the system.
Well, and it's so funny because I think I've almost switched places with you. As I'm sure you recall, probably 6 or 7 years ago, you penned an article. I think it was actually maybe a 2-part article about thinning the herd.
Oh, yeah.
And I wrote about it. And basically your idea was that we should kill off, 10%, 15% of the nursing homes every year, right?
10%. Every year.
I actually wrote an article challenging that, there was somebody on your team that was very defensive and took me back on, and we had an interesting conversation. And now I find that as I've had some loved ones in nursing homes and I'm watching some of the disaster, I may be more in that camp even than you are, but I do agree with you that so much of this is a systemic problem, right? Yeah. I don't think that they're mostly bad employees. I think that mostly employees go into their new jobs in senior living or any place with good intentions, and it's the system that makes them bad. So let's talk about what you're working on now.
Well, I'm deep into paving a pathway for population health in senior living. So I predict, or I'm saying, I think the next big frontier in senior living is actually the introduction of value-based reimbursement, risk-based contracts, and population health into senior living. And, there are some people who think that's a great thing and some people who think it's a terrible thing. There's reason for both optimism and caution, I think. But I think it's essential. And we were talking earlier, before the show started, about how a lot of the people moving into senior living post-pandemic are really displaying a higher level of need and more complexity. And I think that's just a harbinger of what's to come, is that we're going to have to be much more sophisticated in integrating health and wellness into senior living than we've been in the past.
So I think that right now I know that right now there's this huge debate about what senior living should be, what it should look like for boomers. And I've started working on an article where I'm actually thinking about what do you include in senior living. So
yeah, okay.
Assisted living is senior living, right? Memory care is a senior living, independent living, senior living, nursing home senior living, you think?
Yes.
Okay. How about Margaritaville?
That's interesting. I would say yes. They would say no.
That's kind of that's how I would see it. How about the villages?
Interesting. I'd have to say again, yes. I would say yes. They would say no. Because I'll tell you what the deal is. It's age segregation. That's the thing that's in my head. So if you're in an age segregated environment, then I call that senior living the way we use the term today. If you're not, I don't know about you, but right now I am not living in an age segregated environment. I have neighbors of different ages. So I don't think I'm living in senior living. Some of my neighbors are older than I am, but it's not age segregated.
Right. And so when you talk about, as you talk about this population health, is that senior living?
No. Well,
okay. So
let's hear. Yes and no. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, go ahead. I want to hear about this. Why is it yes and no?
Right now I'm working with a company called Lifespark. They're based in Minneapolis, and you're going to be hearing about them nationwide in the near future. But here's the point. Lifespark is founded as a home and community-based service company. And we really recently purchased about 32 senior living communities, but we're not in the senior living business. We're in the home and community-based business. So we're bringing that HCBS mindset into buildings that were previously much more classically could be considered senior living. And here's what I think is coming. So the yes and no is really basically this. If the focus is on people living where they want to live and being supported wherever they call home, I see that being more in the what we would call HCBS universe, home and community-based service universe. And if people are giving up their home to come live in a place that's age segregated, I see that as more senior living. And the line between those two things, here's what I'm saying. The line's going to get fuzzier and fuzzier.
Well, this is so fascinating. So I think I'm a couple years older than you, but we're pretty close in age. And so, I'm like you. I'm still working. I'm passionate. I don't see senior living in my future for maybe another 10 years. But after that, maybe 15. It's possible. But my biggest objection is the age segregation. And how does Lifespark get past that?
Yeah. Well, so there's a couple of things there. One, I think, is that we're going to be seeing a number of what we would call classical senior living properties are going to be repositioned as multi-generational living options. So I think, we have senior living right now as a kind of an organizing mantra. I think we're going to be talking more about co-living. And I think not all, but a number of, quote, senior living properties are going to reposition around co-living and more of a community ethos with elder rich, absolutely, but not elder restricted. And you're going to be walking into some of these places and see people with kids, and you're going to see people who are in college, and young people, older people, and there's going to be more of an intergenerational mix. I think that's coming, but that's really on the cultural side. On the kind of the health and wellness side, it's about moving away from kind of a facility-based universe or approach, more toward the person and the community. That's those two things are going to happen simultaneously.
So I'm going to sort of toss you a bundle of questions, and you'll probably be able to make more sense out of it. But I'm wondering, well, first off, where population health sort of fits into this equation. And I see a lot of a conversation in senior living about creating healthy, mostly it's about diet, it's a little bit about exercise. And yet I think that we're talking about, can we take people who have had a kind of a lifestyle for 70 or 80 years and then really make a difference? And maybe this all comes down to the question of, can I actually increase both lifespan and quality of lifespan in a population health setting? I hate to even use the term senior living.
So I was listening very closely because you asked very interesting questions. So I wasn't sure what I was going to say until you got to the words, can we make a difference? I'm like, yes, we can make a difference.
How do we do that?
So here's the thing. I taught medical students and residents for 25 years. And they'd come to my clerkship, right? So I'm the professor of geriatrics. And they're like, oh my God, I've got to do a month of geriatrics. And on day one, I would say to them every year, geriatrics is the best of all medical specialties because you only need 3 things to practice geriatrics. Just 3 things. Your head, your heart, and your hands. That's all you need to be a geriatrician. And I at least got them to think. But here's the point.
You got to expand on that a little bit.
So here's my point. Older people are people for whom you can make an extraordinary difference. In fact, as we get older and we live with greater frailty and medical comorbidities, as that happens, smaller changes loom larger. So if you gave me a 30-year-old and a 90-year-old and you said, make a difference in this person's life, I can make a difference in the 90-year-old's life way easier than in the 30-year-old's life. So we're actually those of us who work in the field, we're actually in the business of changing people's lives for the better, and we do it every day. Because small things make a big difference in the later decades of life, and that's why I'm so excited about this. Because as we get more tools available to us, and we build stronger cultures, we can actually make a big difference.
So let's actually talk about. So if I'm an operator and I'm listening to what you're saying, I'm thinking that sounds really, really good. But how do I do that? How are you doing that?
Well, okay, I'm going to give you a concrete example. I was online just before our show. You happen to know that because we set this up. We're doing this right now because I was doing another show earlier. And I was on something called The Really Big Show. And it is broadcast to all the Lifespark senior living communities. And it's a sports show because the communities have all organized forklift racing teams.
What?
Yes.
Real forklifts?
Yeah, well, they're 1/10 scale radio controlled forklifts.
Okay.
That you run with a remote, and they are competing in the National Forklift Racing League, and they have to learn to drive the forklifts and then pick up loads and move them through an obstacle course and deliver them in direct live competition with other communities. So every week we have the really big show where we talk about who won, who lost, what happened, whose equipment broke down, who's coming up fast and who's coming down. I mean, and we talk about that every week. And I make this point, actually I made on the show before, I'm making it right now. Aging is a team sport. And when we're out there racing forklifts, we're making a team and we're practicing the things that create well-being in the rest of our lives. So you asked a simple question and I gave you a long answer, but the reason I did is because that's it. You said, well, how can you make a difference? So what we did was organize a forklift racing league. But I mean, you can do something else. The key is to move from me to we, from the individual to the community, from personal habits to culture. That's the big shift that really pays off in aging.
So this is so fascinating to me. So first off, before I forget, I want an invitation to come watch next week.
Okay. Well,
I want to come watch this.
We will send you a link. I see a person on the chat here named Monica Hunter. He's a big fan of the forklift racing. Monica, let's make sure that Steve gets an invite because he would be. It'd be great to have him see some exciting forklift racing action.
And do you have? And I have to know. Do you have your own forklift?
I do. I mean, man, come on. What? How could you say that I would not have my own forklift?
I would assume so. That is awesome.
Yeah, this is a top race forklift. I'm sorry, I'm getting artifact from my screen there, but this is a forklift that is radio controlled, very fun to drive. You can learn to drive it quickly. To master it takes a while.
I would imagine so. So one of the things that has surprised me as we've done thought leadership in the industry, no, it probably shouldn't, and this probably won't surprise you at all, is that we have a pretty fair number of residents who are readers, watchers, and I can pretty much guarantee we've got some residents who are watching right now. One of the things I hear from them consistently is that senior living operators have a mindset of doing for them.
Yeah.
How do we get past that?
Well, look, this is a classic conundrum. And again, what I love being on with you is you poke into the little corners that really make a big difference. So there's research that goes way back. It goes back 50 years or more. I'm going to summarize it, but it's really well done. It says that when we do things for another person, we tend to think less of that person. When we do things with another person, we tend to think more of the other person. So this is a trap that cultural ageism sets up for us. We have a narrative in senior living that goes something like, oh, I love senior living, love doing things for the old people. And that's bad. I hate that. Yuck.
I hate it too.
Ugh. So I like this. I work in senior living, and every day I get to go to work and do things with people who are really awesome and incredible, and they also happen to be old. It's great. Those two sentences are wildly divergent in the culture they create. So that we do things for you culture is very disabling. It's very hierarchical, and it's not a nice way to live. The we do things together thing is much more collegial. It supports a higher sense of self-esteem for everybody involved, and it's actually it creates richer, more meaningful cultures.
And I think that, if we can, maybe it's too crass to talk about, but I think money is an okay thing to talk about because we kind of all need it.
Yeah.
My sense is, and you probably have better data on this, my sense is that when you create purpose and you're doing things together, we're going to have residents who are going to demand less. Huge issue with staffing right now, and who are going to live longer. And I think about having 100-unit senior living community. If I could increase my length of stay by just 1 month, that's like filling over a course of a year. That's like filling 8 additional apartments, which is crazy significant.
Yeah. So this again goes back to population health. So senior living's historical roots, they come out of hospitality. It's cool, yay. And they for a long time they sold a lifestyle, or they sold a amenity package. To some degree, I think they also sold kind of community and conviviality. Great, I'm there for all that. Fine, but what's coming is I think we're going to be selling access to a healthier way of living. That you said this earlier, that helps you live better longer. We haven't really sold that because we haven't had the tools to deliver on that. And I think that population health is going to put some of those tools in our hands for the first time.
So you're working on something to do. You have something else you're working on, Callista or something? Can we talk about that? Or is that
well, I'm on the board of an organization that is. I'm on the board of an organization that's really looking to do some affordable, small housing units in Colorado for a mixed age, multi-ability, multi-age community that helps people enrich each other's lives. So it's really about cultivating neighborliness. And I just bring up neighborliness because I think this is a place where senior living misses the mark. Because of our history in hospitality, we tend to think of each person like as a discrete unit, like what does this person need, what does that person need? Instead of thinking of the community as a whole and cultivating neighborliness in the community. And I'm going to tell a very quick story here because I got taught a good lesson about this when I was on a speaking tour in Japan. And we were in Hiroshima, and I was taken to this community of elders, which are not as common in Japan as here. And I got there, I don't speak Japanese, and I'm like a outside stranger person, but I could feel the love. And I'm like, oh, wow. This is I came all the way halfway around the world and I find this incredible, cool place that don't have to speak a word. I know the feeling, right? So I get to talk to the person who is the leader of the community. And I'm like, what, how do you do this? He's like, oh, yes, that's very simple. Everyone says good morning to everyone. I'm like, what? He's like, no, everybody says good morning to everyone. So I got to be there one morning because I was in town for this lecture. And everybody says good morning to everyone. And it is like a song. They were speaking Japanese, obviously, but it was like this song. Ohayo gozaimasu. Ohayo gozaimasu. I don't have a good Japanese accent, but the point is, by the time it was noon, everyone had been wished a good morning and had wished many, many people a good morning. And he felt that was the essence of creating reciprocity and community. in that little place in the hills of Hiroshima. And I always, after I left there, I was always like, wow, it's the simple things that make the biggest difference, really.
Two quick stories from me.
Mm-hmm.
The first is that last week, if you're on here listening, this is probably a story we should write about. So you need to get in touch because I can't remember who it was I was talking to, but I was talking to somebody whose mom moved into a senior living community, and she went in because she had, declining health. She needed to be there. So it wasn't like I can hardly wait to get in. But the first day she moved in, her neighbor came and knocked on the door and said, "Hi, I'm going to be your best friend, and I'm going to be your friend, and I'm going to make this work." And she was in this community for, I think, 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that one person, a resident, not a staff member, it was an amazing, amazing experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then when you're telling the story about what happened in Japan, I'm thinking about a conversation I had with a resident recently who was talking about how in his particular community, the hourly workers are like second-class people. It's like you've gone back into, the 17 or 1800s where it's serfdom. And if you do something like everybody saying hello, it sort of levels the playing field for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that this, we could all benefit from this. So anybody who's watching, this is why you come to Foresight TVs, to get cool stuff that you can steal. And that is the best way. I'm totally in favor of stealing anything that works. But I will say, stealing the good morning. That's a lot of people to say good morning to, and it takes a while to get it going. The other thing is cultivating smiling. There are a number of senior living communities where there isn't enough smiling going on. And there you go. If I had an index, a smiling index, it would really help me rank the quality of the community by how much smiling goes on in a day. So those two things are easy to start and hard to master. It's like forklift racing.
I've got a new keynote that I'm delivering in about a month in Orlando. And it's all about how to create a work culture where people love coming to work every day.
Yeah.
And as I give this talk, I will tell you that my biggest fear is that it will seem too simplistic.
Yeah.
And that people will say, well, I've tried that and it didn't work, or it doesn't work. It's very simple, but it's very hard to do because you have to be relentless, and it has to do with your heart for your people every day.
Yeah. So here, I'll say one thing, because I do have, like you, I have some experience with culture. And here's the thing about culture, all humans, all continents, all eras, everywhere. It's a human universal. If something bears on human culture, or it's related to, or it sustains human culture, it has to be repeated over and over and over and over and over again. And I'll give you an example, strictly from an anthropological point of view, but if you look at successful religious communities, they repeat the same stuff over and 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 over, because they know how important that is. And then we get off into like professional world and we're like, hey, you saw that PowerPoint 9 months ago. Why aren't you doing it? Well, yeah, you know what you needed? That PowerPoint and 9 months of constantly reminding, constantly telling the story, constantly reinforcing the message. That's how you change culture. And that's not easy. So
no, it's not. And I will tell you, in my own little organization, it's funny because if I were to just sit back and think about it, I'd say I was so repetitive, but I talk about how our mission is to make the lives of people who live and work in senior living better. and I talk about how we're doing it. I tell stories when I hear from people who have benefited from the things we're talking about. And I say it over and over and over and over again. And I've never once, this won't surprise you, I've never once have anybody come to me and say, you know what, you keep saying that too much. Because they want to be a part of something that changes the world. We have this unique opportunity to change the world, and we're not. So I loved this.
So I'm just going to say, good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Bill. And I want to say good morning, Monica and James and Deanna and Gert.
Geert, now I'm going to say, I see Geert's on here. He's a person who's done a lot of work on culture also. You ought to talk to him sometime if you haven't.
And Brand, I would love to, Gert. I'd love to have a conversation. I just think, and I think pretty much everywhere in the country it's actually afternoon, so we can do good afternoon as well.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
I want to sort of close out with, I want to see if I can put a little bit more meat on the bones here. So you're gonna create this new population-based community that you're beginning to offer, perhaps, or you're going to offer. Tell me what that's going to look like in terms of why I want to move in.
Well, here's the thing. I'll put it to you very simply, and this connects my work with Eden Alternative, Greenhouse, Lifespark. I'm speaking in the whole. We are in the midst of a historic shift from the facility, hear me out, from the facility to home and community-based services. And what that means is there's going to be more pressure than ever on senior living to pivot from facility to community. And I don't mean sticking a sticker on the front of the building, community. I mean being a community. So here's the trouble with that pivot, the problem. We need better homes and better communities. I'm all for HCBS, home and community-based services, but not everybody has a really great home. Some homes are dangerous. Some homes are isolating. Some homes are expensive and harmful to their people's financial health. Some homes are ill-suited to the experience of aging. Communities. Not all communities embrace elders. Some of the age-segregated communities are the most ageist communities in America. And we've got a lot of work to do to pivot out of the history of facilityism into a future that's driven by a community-based understanding of health and wellness. And that's the essence of the work I'm doing today and what I think is most important.
I want to pop this comment up from James. This is so powerful, Bill. As I age, I want to be in a place where I have community with other people, where I'm engaging, where for me, I'm making a difference in the world. I continue to create and evolve and learn. And my dad's my hero in this. He passed away a few months ago, as most people who are readers, watchers know. But you know what? 3 days before he passed away, he was still probably had 3 books he was reading at any given time. And he was a retired physician, but it was esoteric stuff. He had like 12 books on succulents, right? And nice. But he was just curious, right? And that's where I want to be. And then I want my community, my senior living community, my health, home and community-based services to help me with that stuff that I can't get anyplace else.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me pick up for you on that. We those of us working in this field we're living in interesting times, and there was a long period in our field when perpetuating the status quo was the smart move, and really savvy people understood that, and that's exactly what they did. However, and this is where I think like Lifespark comes in, we've now got to pivot. And James's comment was beautiful, because we've got to shift from a faux community to true community. And the tools of population health can help us make that happen. And I'm excited about the change.
Cool. Well, I look forward to, I love the conversations. I appreciate your passion for changing the world for older people, for anything other than status quo. It's what we're ultimately all about here is, how do we make the lives of people better? And we believe that people working together, community is a lot better than a hospitality model or a medical model. And so thank you very much. I'm going to close it out. If you can stay on for just a second, and I'll catch up and we'll be good to go.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Okay, guys.